On today's episode, we'll be joining the citizen hearing once again as they continue to discuss one of the most famous UFO cases in the world, known as the Roswell UFO incident. Thank you for joining me and welcome once again. I'm your host, Nick Ryan. I hope you all have been having a wonderful week, and before we start today's episode, I'd like to thank everyone for their support and generosity. And if you haven't already, please consider following, sharing, and reviewing the podcast. This indeed supports us by helping new listeners to find the show. And of course, you can also support us at patreon.com/paranormalmysteries or at buymeacoffee.com/paranormal. And if you'd like to share your paranormal encounter with the podcast, you can submit your story through email at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com, through voice message at speakpipe.com/paranormalmysteries, or on our website at paranormalmysteriespodcast.com. And of course, these links can be found in the show notes. And now, let's listen in on part 2 of the Roswell hearing.
To all of you for testifying. You did a great job. How long, I look at what happened at Roswell as something that happened a long time ago, and that there was some put down of it, and there's been some fun made out of it, but that a lot of people, because there was enough information and enough facts out that a lot of people believed that something happened there. Am I way off base? I'm just trying to think back a few years because it hasn't been in the paper recently, but that's my recollection of that incident, that there was enough proof that we knew it was something other than from the United States. Yeah, Donald?
As I'd mentioned in my opening statement, I like to emphasize that we had the good fortune of working with and having enlisted the late Congressman Stephen Schiff of New Mexico, who pushed for congressional hearings on this very matter through the early 90s.
Right.
And so much so that he had sent 3 separate letters to then Secretary of Defense Les Aspin, which all went unanswered, which only intrigued him and raised his curiosity all the more as far as, well, what are they hiding? I'm just asking, as the late Senator Barry Goldwater, and even his request to General Curtis LeMay, can I at least see the file? To which LeMay said, hell no, and don't ever ask me again. So we're in good company, whether we're talking about Goldwater or Schiff, or even former presidents Bill Clinton or Carter, who also would lament the fact that they could not get the truth about Roswell. But getting back to Congressman Schiff, in his failed efforts, as the press itself became more interested as to who would win this tug of war, because he was being stonewalled not only by the Secretary of Defense, but also the White House,
right,
and then the branches of the military. And he had assurances, specifically from the Air Force, that should they find anything in their files, he would be the first one. Well, as Newsweek magazine very aptly put it, as though a preemptive strike, they called a press conference here at the Pentagon, and Colonel Richard Weaver, as Colonel Randall mentioned, in putting out the Project Mogul theory, same balloon. It was just a redesign of the same balloon explanation. And I'll never forget how I called up Congressman Schiff here at his office in Washington, thinking that, well, that would end that relationship because he would have to accept that new explanation, that new solution to the Roswell mystery. And his immediate response to me was, Don, they're a bunch of damn liars. And he had assured us, and you know the history, he assured us that with his re-election coming up, that we would then resume the effort. Well, he would die shortly after his reelection, age of 51. We don't read anything into that except that we lost a tremendous ally. And in that, there was a lot of that publicity, the fact that someone within the government was actually sticking their nose under the curtain, under the tent, and for nothing more than asking to see the files, and still being turned down, still being told, just as Senator Goldwater, hell no, and don't ask.
There was debris. I mean, it crashed. There was debris, and talked about touching the debris, and that it was not something that you'd ever felt or done before. Is that still around, the debris from that?
Not with us, it isn't. That's the problem. We don't have the debris. We don't have pieces.
What happened to it?
Probably got sent to right field, when we know that it got sent.
Okay.
Where it went from there, whether it went to Area 51 or who knows what, we don't know. The security curtain slammed down very quickly.
How
That's
quickly
what
afterwards? How, I mean,
5 hours.
how many?
5 hours. From the actual announcement of the recovery of the flying disc, it evolved, as I mentioned, within 5 hours into the weather balloon. In fact, as Stanton mentioned, and we have Brigadier General Thomas DuBose, who is even in 2 of the pictures with the substituted weather balloon. He stated that the balloon was a hoax, that part of it. They were ordered, as he described, to get the press off of the general's back, off of General Ramey's back. They were the ones who substituted the balloon for the real material. And when you have a brigadier general going on the record actually stating that the official government explanation is a hoax, you would think it would get the media's attention.
Right.
And that's also the dilemma that we have had with the very conception of the investigation of the Roswell incident. The fact that, well, why don't the witnesses come forward? Because just as Jesse's father, just imagine at that time he was a lieutenant colonel. He was the head of intelligence of the 509th Bomb Group. Again, I can't use the word enough. The elite within the military, head of intelligence. We might even ask, why would the base commander, Colonel Blanchard, instead of just sending out a couple of grunts, a couple of enlisted men to go check out this funny material, he sends out his 2 head of intelligence, 2 officers, follow the rancher back and investigate this firsthand on a 4th of July weekend, no less. See, these are all the questions that the press refuses to look into, but we haven't. And that dilemma, that as Major Marcel, when he finally stepped forward and said, being familiar with all materials, both familiar and domestic, this was something not made on this earth. We didn't read about this in the papers, did we? It wasn't on the CBS Evening News. The only publication to touch that was the National Enquirer. So we wonder why there's this constant taboo, this ridicule factor, and it's the very reason that witnesses have refused to come forward after all these years, because they know how it's going to be treated.
Thank you.
I want to ask Colonel Randall, what is the significance of the July 1947 Roswell incident, in that we also had a significant one in July of 1945? Tell me, what is the significance?
Well, the events in Roswell in 1947 set up the entire cover-up. At that point, we
Cover-up of what?
cover-up of the alien visitation.
Okay, say that.
What we look at is, after the Kenneth Arnold sighting on June 24th, 1947, there was an awful lot of stories in the newspapers about flying saucers. There was all kinds of discussion about what they were. One scientist postulated that if you left a dark movie theater and you walked out into the bright sunlight, you'd see spots in front of your eyes. This is what people were seeing. Didn't explain why the spots were black instead of silver. There were military officers making comments. At one point, one officer said, well, we're not interested in the flying saucers
Okay, stop.
anymore.
I don't want to know the editorial. I want to know what about the Roswell incident began the cover-up, you just said it, and no, don't give me the editorial part. Just stay on that part. Stay on the scientific part right there. What happened at Roswell, the cover-up of the alien, whatever we think that is. I hate that word, but whatever that is. Why, and yet, even yet today, why?
In 1947, we'd just come out of a war. We are worried about our competitors in the world. If we can exploit this find, discover the propulsion system, discover the materials, how they work, we take a huge step ahead of our competitors in the rest of the world. So in 1947, it makes perfect sense. We don't want people talking about this. The Russians aren't going to spy on us if they don't think there's anything there to spy on. So they've eliminated our competitors. Why it persists today, I am somewhat puzzled about, because it would seem that we've become much more sophisticated and we would understand what's going on in the world around us and space around us, and we wouldn't be frightened.
Unless we still don't understand.
And I think the problem is we haven't decoded the materials.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was good. And now you guys who know these people, you don't get to be a major in any of our militaries unless you're a well-respected, highly decorated individual about our nation, our family, and who we are. And that was your father, sir. Congratulations on that. As 11 years old, as you testified today, you witnessed the Roswell incident's crash. I'm saying crash. You might have called it something else. I don't know. Crash is good? Okay. You witnessed particles from the crash, balloon notwithstanding, whatever else they said notwithstanding, actually saw particles of what the craft may or may not have been. Did you not?
Yes, ma'am.
Decorated father, you're now a colonel, a medical doctor, and the Roswell incident continues to be mysterious to some, factual to many. You had firsthand information, and now your children who have lived with a grandfather and a father they've respected of high decorated ability and consequence and served in our military. Military has a special emphasis in most countries, and certainly in ours. That's why everybody who testified in these 3 days, to me, who's ever military, I have the highest respect for their service and dedication. What would you offer to this committee at this time on this issue, Roswell, that would help me to understand, and the rest of us as well, where we go from here? What you've seen, you've already kind of gave us a sample of it and all of that. What else should we know before we get up from here today?
Well, I think what it does, it tells us that we are not alone in the universe. As a matter of fact, there's other civilizations out there, and they're finding Earth-like planets around other star systems every day. And that means that we're probably just beginners on the new kids on the block, so to speak, that they are obviously more advanced than we are in their science and hopefully their cultural abilities too, that they can get here from wherever they come from. So, and it also means that that they survive their nuclear destructive abilities too. I think any civilization that develops into the space travel has gone through a nuclear age, and we're still on the precipice of either surviving or not surviving ours. But it means that they did, and if they can do it, we can also survive our nuclear warlike tendencies.
My last final point for me, are you aware through your father, your own experiences, that we chase their aircraft, or we have on occasion, and obviously they have traced ours, and does that exist, and if so, why, and did we find anything, did they catch us, or are we gone, or what? So.
Well, you know, I just, I'm like, I just know what I read in the papers.
Okay, then that's okay, don't speculate.
I'm just an observer of one event there, and I have a lot of theories, but...
I bet. I'll talk to you offline on those.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next is Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey.
Thank you. There's just so much, and it's, you Marcells, I mean, don't you all worry that this isn't going to be resolved in your lifetime? I mean, good grief, tick, 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 here we are. I mean, what, gray hair and
I'm 76.
some pretty old people, the three of us. But, then your story, then what happens to your story? I mean, and your story, the truth, but it's so much more meaningful when it comes from you.
Well, as a 76-year-old, I'm no spring chicken. But I like to tell my story. I don't embellish it. I tell exactly what I knew about this. And if people want to believe this, that's okay. If they don't want to believe it, that's also okay. That's their opinion. I would certainly like to have the government spill the beans about this while I'm still alive to say, I told you so. But I may not be. But it doesn't matter. I've been there and done that, so I know what it was.
Okay. All of you experts, how many actual ETs have been, I'm going to start saying that instead of the big long word, have been involved in starting with the Roswell and the 2 years before? Wasn't there an actual living being, living something as part of that crash? Before, you said that somebody was offered to go in and see, the remains of something.
The story was Walter Hott, as the public information officer, had issued the press release saying that they had retrieved a crash flying saucer. In the years that followed, he just said, all I did was write the press release.
Right.
Upon his, Don Schmidt and Tom Carey put together, working with Walter Hott and his family, put together an affidavit to be released after he passed away, giving much more information. And he talked about having actually seen the bodies of the aliens and more about that. The important thing was this Richard Harris, who was a financial officer at Roswell in 1947, told me long before Walter admitted to that Walter had taken or seen him in a hangar and said, if you want to see something really incredible, it's beyond that door. And Harris didn't want to go in there and see the bodies, but it was the body of the alien craft. The other part of the question is, did one survive the crash? And there has been testimony from a number of witnesses, yes, that one survived the craft and was in captivity. And I hesitate to use that word because it really wasn't in captivity, but it was held for a number of years. And can you think of anything that would be more lonely than that? You're an alien creature on a planet. You have absolutely no possibility of getting home. You're dealing with a bunch of sentient beings that do not understand you, your culture, or your language. And you're stuck on this planet without any hope of rescue.
Sounds like a Steven Spielberg movie.
Right.
But the point is, there is some testimony that suggests that one may have survived for a period of time, and I believe the date of its supposed death was in 1952.
Since then, since then?
One of the things beyond firsthand witnesses to the materials, to the wreckage, to the characteristics that even by today's standards defy conventional explanation, have been, and sadly, but also much to the credit again of the witnesses, in maintaining that sacred oath to the Constitution, that so many of them, to their very deathbeds, before they would finally confide to their spouses, to their children, and invariably, they all talk about the little people, the little men. They all describe either having been out at the site and having witnessed the bodies, or they were posted at the hangar, P3, Building 84, at the Roswell Army Airfield, where they were on guard, and they would observe the wooden crates being assembled and the bodies being placed into these boxes before being shipped out.
Shipped out to where?
Well, we have the documentation, again, and we have the eyewitness testimony, Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
We have the late Brigadier General Arthur Exon, who was with Foreign Technology Division, which did the testing the reverse engineering of captured weaponry and armory from World War II. So it made perfect sense that you had something crash of either foreign or something beyond that design, it would go to foreign technology. And Exxon described, not firsthand, but that he was aware of the fact that when the materials from Roswell arrived, when they came in, it was the first impression because no one was able to recognize this wreckage, that it most likely was Soviet. But after it was tested, he described that there was a unanimous consensus that the materials had to be from space.
So any of that recently? I mean, that was quite a while ago.
We've conducted to date 3 archaeological digs at the debris field site, the very site that had this huge debris field that canvassed an area of almost 3/4 of a mile long, hundreds of feet wide.
Where is it?
This is just outside of Corona, New Mexico. It's about 65 miles northwest of Roswell. This is where the rancher first reported the find and then led the 2 intelligence officers, Major Marcel and the head of counterintelligence, Captain Sheridan Cavett.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman.
Did your father, Colonel, mention seeing bodies?
Actually, the closest that came to him, my wife asked him one day, "Did you see the bodies?" And he said, "No, I did not see them myself, but I knew people who did."
But what?
He knew people who did see the bodies, but he did not see them himself.
Okay.
I mean, it's blanket statement right there. My wife is the one who asked him, finally came out and asked him.
Who were the people that saw the bodies?
He did not elaborate, so I'm not sure who he was. But to answer the question, no, he did not see the bodies.
Okay. I'm trying to understand the sequence of events, what happened here. You mentioned, Mr. Schmidt, that they sent 2 officers there when ordinarily they would have sent some lower level people to investigate. What was unusual when they simply got the word from the rancher that something had crashed? Why would they think that was unusual enough to send officers?
That is the question.
Yeah, what is it?
And again, especially on a 4th of July weekend,
Yeah.
that it would have been brought to the attention. Now, keep in mind, the rancher did not go to the military. He reported this to the sheriff, Sheriff George Wilcox of Chavez County, headquartered in Roswell. And it was only due to the fact that there was a reporter by the name of Frank Joyce from radio station KGFL who suggested this sounds like a military matter. You should report this to the 509th. And they, in turn, the sheriff contacts the base. He personally speaks to Major Marcel, who's at the PX having a sandwich. And it's important enough, again, 4th of July weekend, that he alerts the very base commander, Colonel William Blanchard. And after examining the material, if it was nothing more mundane than a weather balloon or even an aircraft, a rocket, an errant rocket. We were testing German V-2 rockets over at White Sands at that time. It was still unusual enough that he would dispatch the 2 head of intelligence. And we believe the reason he also sent the head of counterintelligence, plain clothes, Captain Sheridan Cavett, was in the event it was something foreign, that he would be the most capable of identifying it if it was something foreign.
Did the rancher go to the site before the military?
Yes.
Okay.
He was the one who first discovered
But
the
we
debris
don't
field.
know specifically what the rancher reported. He must have reported something somewhat unusual for them to send 2 officers rather than 2 enlisted men on a...
He brought some of the wreckage with him.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
He drove into the sheriff's office.
Okay.
The sheriff calls the base. Major Marcel goes and checks it out, and as he told me, there wasn't anything conventional there. But the rancher also stressed that there's a huge amount of this stuff out at the ranch.
Yeah.
3/4 of a mile, a few hundred yards wide, that's a lot of stuff. And what he was worried about was that his sheep wouldn't cross the debris field. This is desert country out there. They need to go where the water is. They also don't want sheep eating anything like pieces of foil. It is a concern. So that was his concern. Also, and we haven't mentioned it, there was an article in the local paper that rewards were being offered for pieces of one of these saucers people were seeing all over the place. And when the rancher went to Corona and talked to his buddies there at Corona, that's where they did shopping and stuff like that. This is out in the middle of nowhere. They told him about the reward. You had to go try to collect the reward. And we have stories, and I don't know how we can confirm them, that the rancher suddenly wound up with some money after all this. He certainly was entitled to the reward, and the military said, no way, Jose.
Was he also sworn to secrecy? Do we know that? The rancher.
2 years later, when his son, Bill Jr., had recovered enough pieces to fill up a cigar box, and his wife, Shirley, even described how he'd come home for dinner after working the ranch, and he kept this one piece in his leather chaps, and she would describe how he would take this piece out, and she'd watch as he'd try to whittle on it and poke through it, and then he would crumble it up, crease it, fold it, and every time he'd lay it down, it would just smooth right out. 2 years later, there's a knock on his door, and there was a military captain and 3 non-commissioned officers. We know what you have, and you will give it to us. So he turned over the box of material. This was 2 years after the incident. They mentioned to him, according to Bill Jr., that just as your father swore that he would not say another word about this, and should he ever discover any more material, he would contact us immediately. We're asking the same of you.
Before we continue, we're going to take a quick break, so please stay tuned.
We should mention one other thing here that I think gives an idea of the scope of the concern by the military here. We have heard testimony from the daughter of the rancher, of the sheriff, I'm sorry, that she was staying with her grandmother, it was a grandmother. There was a show on television about UFOs, and the grandmother says to the granddaughter, you know, the reason your grandfather didn't rerun for sheriff was when that saucer crashed, the military came to him and said, if you ever tell about what you saw, we will kill you and we will kill your family. She was horrified. You didn't believe them, she says to her grandmother. I was there. I believed them, was the answer. So, you know, sure, it's a little story, but we've heard it. The granddaughter was a teacher. They were, how shall I put this, threatening.
Could the gentleman from Maryland yield just 30 seconds to clear up one question that's, and anybody that can answer this. Can anybody here give us the name of any person that would have been at least the age of 18 or older in 1947, who at the time, in a similar way to how Jesse Marcel Sr. said he had received these kinds of materials and they had these certain property traits, which he said almost immediately to people. Is there anybody that, other than, or even a child, or who, can you give us the name of anybody who said they saw a body? They saw bodies. Back in 1947, the name of any person that you've got in, you know, you've written, or you've studied this.
We should mention
we
that
talked about, you know, and I know that Mr. Marcel said that he knew people that had seen the bodies, but he never said he had seen the body. I just want to make sure that we have a witness, if we do or if we don't. I just want to know that could give the kind of credibility on the question of bodies, which was talked about rather freely a few minutes ago. In the same vein, Who has seen a body and said so back in 1947, 48? That's my question.
If you're looking for documentation from 1947, we simply don't have it. If you want the name of somebody who was there in 1947 who saw bodies, then we have lots of names. Major Edwin Easley, the provost marshal, mentioned to his family that he had seen the bodies. He mentioned they quizzed him about it when he was very gravely ill with cancer about that, and he said, "Oh, the creatures," to them.
Of course, I asked who had seen the bodies and said so in the same time period. That
Nobody was asking those questions in 1947.
Wait, nobody was asking about debris either until Mr. Marcel said, "I've seen this debris."
Precisely.
I brought it to him.
We have.
Are you saying that nobody said anything about bodies back in 1947?
Nothing
It was
to-
only until way later?
That's
I just want to know.
That's
I mean,
probably
I'm not
that's probably an
I don't
accurate
know.
statement. There's probably
I'm
an
a little
accurate
confused
statement.
on the issue is what I'm.
What you have to understand is, after the story broke in the newspapers, the military got everybody out of town. Marcel is not. If you're a reporter and you're looking for Major Marcel, you can't find him. If you want to talk to Mac Brazel, you can't find him. Mac Brazel saw the bodies.
Just reclaim my question, just so I make sure I'm clear here. What I'm trying to ask. Hey, the Army, the Air Force, they could have been covering up from less than day one. They could, from the first second. That's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking, was there any person at the time? And maybe they can't because of a cover-up, even at the time. I'm just saying, is there the name of anybody, living or dead, who in 1947 it was documented that they said, and at that time said, not on their deathbed, not later after they've had some other situation, but at the time said they saw a body. That's my question.
I understand the question.
Yeah.
I understand the question. And the answer is no. We have no documentation from that time frame when they saw the bodies. What we have are the people who were there, who later on talked about it. Most of these people didn't come forward with their tales.
I apologize for taking all.
That was the.
But I wasn't trying to. Yeah, that's last time he'll yield to the gentleman from Utah.
Let me
make just one closing observation. Oh, one quick question. Were there any radar tracks from FAA over this? No? No radar tracks that you know of? Okay, none. Okay, curious about that. You know, there are two things about this that tell me, if I didn't know anything else and never met any of you, that the Air Force is not being honest. One is, if this was indeed a balloon, there was no darned reason to send it to Wright Field. Everybody would have recognized the balloon. So the very fact that they sent the material there tells me that they're not telling the truth. And the second thing that tells me they're not telling the truth is that if in fact it was a balloon, why in the heck would they issue a press release saying that a flying saucer had crashed there? Yeah, and I don't know how you can argue away those two things.
The debunker would say that's because Colonel Blanchard was a loose cannon, and he probably got banned to Siberia for putting out that stupid story. I've had somebody tell me that. They don't mention he got 4 more promotions. He was a 4-star general when he died of a heart attack and was vice chief of staff of the Air Force. That's not what you do when you have a loose cannon tell
But
stupid
those two
stories.
things alone tell the honest observer that they are not now telling us the truth.
Yes.
A balloon is not going to be sent to Wright-Patterson, and a balloon is not going to result in a press release that says that a flying saucer has crashed. That was the press release. That's what they did with what they found there. And what they found there, as far as we know, is either still in Wright-Patterson or has been destroyed. Right?
Or it's been moved to another location.
Yes. But it's still in their possession.
It can be tracked to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with documentation and
Wright Field then, I think.
Wright Field at the time, yes.
Right.
And from that point on, we don't know where it went. It could have gone to Area 51. Yeah. We've been told that one of the bodies went to MacDill, which was a aerospace medical facility.
Okay. Thank you for being generous with time, sir.
Well, that's okay. I was pushing in to keep that sign up. I get 3 minutes. First off, having been a CIC officer, we had a set format report system. Was there any documentation within the CIC about the report of going to the crash site? Briefly.
Well, what was especially interesting to us was after Major Marcel was sent directly, and as Kevin had mentioned, how they took all the key players immediately out of the picture, that anybody who had information on this was immediately either sent away or went on leave, or in the case of Colonel Blanchard, he set up an operation at the crash site. They were unavailable to the press, and yet there was still a lot of rumor throughout the area. In fact, in talking to surviving people throughout the Roswell area, there was a lot of talk about the bodies, a lot of rumor about bodies recovered, a lot of talk about the little men recovered north of town. As far as the counterintelligence officer, when Major Marcel was sent for the balloon press conference in Fort Worth with General Ramey, he was kept overnight. And then when he returned late afternoon the next day, July 9th, on the very flight that we're convinced transported a crate of material which was hidden in bomb pit number 1, and it wasn't an atomic bomb. We have firsthand testimony to that. In fact, we even have a copy of the manifest. It was an unscheduled flight that went out at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, July 9th. Well, Marcel, the next morning of July 10th, he immediately confronted Cavett. He wanted to see the report. He wanted to know what had transpired in his absence while he had been kept over at Fort Worth.
What did Cavett say?
And Cavett kept responding. And this was also in the presence of counterintelligence non-commissioned officer Louis Rickett, who we also interviewed quite extensively. That Cavett kept telling him, kept responding, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" Nothing happened. And Marcel finally reminded him, "I outrank you," to which Cavett responded, "It's out of my hands. Take it up with Washington. They're now calling the shots."
Thank you very much. I want to ask questions of an 11-year-old boy.
Yes, sir.
This is not a hypnotic situation. Put your mind back as an 11-year-old. You're in the living room. Did your dad come back from the site in a pickup truck, in a sedan? Do you recall?
We had a 1942 Buick convertible. Special.
Okay, so he didn't have a military vehicle. He took his own vehicle to go to the site.
That's correct.
Okay. When he came back in his vehicle, was Captain Cravett with him, or was your dad alone?
He was alone.
He was alone. He took some, you weren't there at the vehicle, or you were in the living room. He took some material out of the vehicle and brought it into the living room, correct?
Actually, the kitchen.
In the kitchen, okay? Now, how big was it? A little bit? Big? You got a kitchen table now. What did you see on the kitchen table? 11-year-old boy.
This was distributed on the floor of the kitchen, which was about 7 by 5 or 8 by 10 area. And he had pre-positioned the material on the kitchen floor before he got us up. So when we got up and walked into the kitchen, the debris was already pre-positioned on the floor of the kitchen, which was about maybe 30 square feet worth, just a couple of large.
So you weren't there when he brought it in. He set it all up and then called you and your mother to come in. Let's take a look at this.
Exactly. He pre-positioned it.
Okay. Pre-positioning, he was trying to form somewhat of a design if you're pre-positioning.
I think he was trying to put it together, but there's so much of it, he couldn't do that.
There wasn't enough.
Yes.
And was a beam like this, which you're circulating, is this one of the things you saw there on the floor?
Yeah, there are several beams like that, and like I said, there was also some black plastic debris, like a broken phonograph record at that time, but it wasn't that. It wasn't vinyl. So, but the debris primarily was the beams, the foil, and the black plastic debris. I did not, again, see any electronics.
As your father is talking to you and your mother, did he mention any fact that, boy, we saw this debris and look at it, but we also saw some bodies? Did he say anything like that?
No, sir.
So he did not want to horrify you as a child or your mother that he saw something worse than that. So do you have any conclusion from the conversation as an 11-year-old that maybe your dad was not telling you everything that he saw?
Bodies were at another location. It wasn't all in one place. The
So they
debris was
spread out.
over here. The crew compartment, call it what you want, was someplace else.
Very good. That's a good addition, but I want to stay with the 11-year-old boy.
Yes. Well, the question was, I'm sorry.
Well, just,
Well,
did you have any inkling as an 11-year-old that your father was withholding horrific information from you as he's displaying the physical findings?
he kind of kept things close to his chest, so I'm not sure what the internal thoughts were on this, but he was very adamant that we were not to talk about it.
That we were going to what?
That we were not to talk about this. But he kept things close to his chest. You know, he had a job on the base, and I really never knew what he did because he was the intelligence. He didn't really confide with the family what his job was or what he did, you know, things like that.
Which would be the normal task of a father who's in intelligence.
Yes.
Is there anything else you can share with us of your impressions and knowledge of an 11-year-old boy?
Well, yeah, it was a very earth awakening experience, or space awakening experience for me. It did make this did make me very interested in astronomy and cosmology, because I realized that whatever was on the kitchen floor didn't come from here, but came from out there.
Yeah, I got that impression from other comments that you've made, that you've intellectualized your experience quite extensively.
Yes.
Let me close this facet of for another hearing. We'll take what? We're going to take a 7-minute?
Carolyn has a question.
Carolyn, please.
I heard you about to close it, and I just wanted
Yes,
to
no,
ask.
ask your
Okay.
question. We
Just
got
wanted to
a
ask
few
something
moments.
you just said. So the major was an intelligence, high-level man.
Yes, ma'am.
Kept things close to his chest.
Yes, ma'am.
Didn't share a lot with you that he felt was very high intellectually, has to do with his work.
Yes.
But,
Okay.
I'm gonna let you answer this. But he prearranged what he had gotten that night and put it away on the floor, woke you up and your mom
Yes.
to come take a look at it. Now that in and of itself, this goes my mystery side of me, dun, 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 dun. But then that was significant. He didn't want you to talk about it. He never talked to you about it, but he wanted you to see that and never to mention it again. What do you make of that?
That
Well,
was later.
Yeah.
Sorry?
There's a time period in between
Between
when he
what?
saw it on the floor
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and when he
And-
came back from Texas.
Okay, I'm talking about just the floor and just waking you up, seeing you. He didn't have to show you anything. He could have just took it onto the base and
Yeah.
did whatever he did.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
He thought it was significant material.
Yeah.
Right, and he wanted
Yeah.
his child to see it and
Yeah.
his wife, who he never even discussed things with.
Yeah, at that time, the material was not classified, so he felt okay to do that. As a matter of fact, the only time I knew my dad to break security clearances is when he came back from overseas. I asked him, what did the atomic bomb look like? And what he did, he drew the outline of the Fat Man, the bomb that was used on Nagasaki. But then he tore it up and threw it away in the
But
trash
I
can.
wasn't suggesting that he was breaking any kind of intelligence by showing it. He thought he's a major. He's a big time. He's up there with the generals and almost with the Joint Chiefs of Staff folk, you know? And he wanted to show you what he had found and what had obviously crashed near your home. But you couldn't say something about it. And then for whomever they are to take it and make light of it and it never happened and it's a balloon, that doesn't go together.
No. You know, again, he was very excited about this. He knew this was a very special event there, and he wanted my mother and myself to be first-hand witnesses to this thing. But when he came back from Fort Worth after General Ramey, then he said, no more. It didn't happen, period.
You got to stay with it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute stretch recess, no more than that, 10 minutes, and we'll go into the next testimony.
I hope you all enjoyed part 2 of the Roswell hearings. And if you'd like to learn more about the citizen hearing on UFO disclosure, please see the show notes. And if you've encountered something that you can't explain, you can contact me through email, voice message, or on our website, and these links can be found in the show notes as well. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Friday as we uncover even more experiences involving paranormal mysteries.